coming up on The Whitney Reynolds Show.
If you want to be vulnerable and be your real self, what's the worst that can happen? Oh, people won't like me. Okay, well then, but what? How's that bad? Because if they don't like you for your real self, so maybe this is an autism thing, but I actually don't care what people think.
You're just expecting the best out of people. I think that's good, but you're like, being online, you have to recognize that it's kind of the Wild West out there, and the world can be that way too.
What do you want the viewers to walk away with from this?
Most of all, I hope they relate. I hope they see themselves in Margaret, and and that they laugh and that they're moved, and I hope it inspires them to go tell their own stories with their friends.
People think when they hear about this movie, oh, it's going to be a sad movie about a guy with Parkinson's. It's absolutely not that movie. He drops out of high school, moves to LA. He's like really short. No one thinks he's going to do anything. He picks up as the biggest movie star in America.
The Whitney Reynolds Show is made possible by Together at Peace, a foundation supporting hopeful bereavement care for the world by inspiring people to find ways to live with, honor, and share the unique love they carry, spreading the light that still shines bright. Together at Peace. Children's Learning Place, dedicated to empowering young students with the confidence to overcome present and future challenges to promote a brighter future for all. Kevin O'Connor Law Firm. When it comes to your injuries, we take it personally. JoePerillo.com, where you can browse their selection of pre-owned luxury vehicles. Based in Chicago, shipping all over the country. Simple Modern, drinkware with unique styles for adults and kids. Take us with you. The Adventures of Harry Moon book series for kids, focusing on becoming your best self with themes of friendship, anti-bullying, and responsibility. At harrymoon.org. Kevin Kelly, Fume Claire, Midwest Moving and Storage, Mike Dyer, Brendan Stadunsky, and by these funders.
What does it take to be vulnerable and to actually be seen? That's today's topic.
I want my story to allow other people to feel that they aren't broken, they aren't a bad person, they weren't born to suffer a neurological difference, not an intellectual difference, a neurological difference. And like me, they may have fallen through the cracks based on medicine not catching up.
Autism diagnosis can be really overwhelming. It can be confronting, confusing, and just plain exhausting. You're born and go through life thinking you're just different, quirky, socially awkward, a loner, unco, or, like me, just a bad person born to struggle and suffer. And then, out of nowhere, bam! You find out you're actually autistic.
Orion flew straight from Australia for this interview. His passion for debunking autism myths keeps him sharing his new story. After a late diagnosis, his world opened up. His misfit mentality changed overnight, and so did his understanding of the world he lives in.
Tell me, when you discovered and connected these dots, was it life-changing for you?
It's a life-changing experience because, prior to diagnosis for me as an adult, I was just tired of life. I had enough.
What made you feel like you had enough? Was it being picked on? Was it not feeling like the rest of the people around you?
With regards to like being picked on, being bullied, ostracized, that kind of stuff, that's from young childhood. So, and I've got a 9-year-old son who is already faces daily bullying and ostracized. So you imagine what it does to their mental health. Nothing ever works. You just never fit in. And also too, you spend your entire time masking, camouflaging, suppressing, how you want to call it, to try and fit in, but you still fail. And it's because Everyone's prepared to accept you until you're just a little bit too autistic. If you go through an entire lifetime of never being accepted, never fitting in career, in personal, all those kind of things, you blame yourself. It's just you. And I just decided, I'm just a bad person. I shouldn't have been born.
Because no one had diagnosed you autistic.
Exactly. So, yeah, you can only be born autistic. You can't acquire it or catch it later in life. So you can blame your parents and look back, but that's not going to help.
Had anybody in your family up until when you found out ever said the word autism?
I don't believe so. They definitely said the word different. There's no question about that. You know, like I went through my whole childhood not really relating or understanding my other brothers and sisters. I obviously love them, but what I mean is just didn't feel, there was a disconnect. And that's the thing, there's a disconnect with your own family because your brain is different.
So you actually hit a point where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Absolutely. I mean, and I talk about, my story really, it was mostly because of my mental health. I was so drained and depressed and anxious, just riddled with it, that I would prefer not to be around anymore. And that's really what I went to my doctor about. But that led to talking to psychologists and psychiatrists, and that led to a diagnosis, a misdiagnosis, and then a diagnosis. And it was the misdiagnosis, the pure lack of education. Oh, I'm not autistic because during the consult I could look you in the eye from time to time, and I went to university. That's the reasons, which is
right,
utterly ridiculous. And that's why I say later in life, you're not diagnosed autistic, you're being recognised.
You say your son saved your life.
100%. So I met my wife, and I wasn't diagnosed. She married a man who she didn't realise was autistic. But of course, I always go, yeah, but you obviously, fell in love with me as a person who's not normal. But, my son and I were diagnosed within months. So it was going through his diagnosis, filling out the forms. My wife was basically saying, as you fill out all the forms, because it's very much a parental thing for kids, this is you. And I'm me going, this is me. And having all these, moments. And then, but for my son being born, but for my son being autistic, I may have never got a diagnosis or realised it to that extent, because how am I supposed to put a label on it? And yeah, I really think he saved my life. I really think autism saved my life.
It was when his first son was born that he noted him being different. Yet it wasn't until his son's actual diagnosis with autism that the penny dropped. Orion's whole life, he wanted to feel accepted by the world he lived in. This frustrating struggle, at times, felt unbearable. And now he finally had a path to life-saving answers.
I'm not what you would class as like a classic, made-up, stereotypical autism picture, right? Like, I'm not someone who is non-verbal. We just hadn't got to that point in the understanding of the brain for me to have anyone I could relate to. So of course I've gone through life not being able to relate to anyone, which is probably one of the reasons why I'm trying to, put me out there so people are going, I finally feel seen. But I'm going to do my best to fix my son's life and autistic kids' lives. I pretty much disclosed to the world days later and then started making content and putting myself out there.
His eye-opening diagnosis changed his life, and he's now created a platform where he is extremely vulnerable and real with his community. His YouTube channel is watched by millions, and he even authored a book. He calls himself the Autism Guy.
It's okay to take your time, go at your own pace in your journey of discovering how you and an autistic diagnosis fit together. The last thing I'd add to being patient, being graceful, caring and kind to yourself is being patient with others. Try not to get caught in the trap of judging others. I get it, our whole lives are purely being judged by others as autistic people, so it's hard to not throw it back at them. But in this phase of being diagnosed, it might make sense to you, but it might not make sense to everyone else in your life.
Do you hope that you are changing the future?
You talked about vulnerability. To me, the thing I've learned is if you can emotionally connect with someone, you can allow them to open up to understand you, and if they understand you, they'll appreciate you. And that's what it's all about for me.
Wow. Your son, is he like you, where he's verbal, has he let you know that you are making changes?
Yeah, he's done some live streams with me, and they love him, which is great. So, you know, the family business is my YouTube channel. He can take it over. That's my family business. You know, my son, who's 9, he speaks like a professor, but he still struggles to read. Now, people need to understand this. This is a neurological, developmental condition. So it's fluid, it's a spectrum. Our daily support needs change. This is a thing. I have a daily conversation with my son's school. I have to tell them that he's autistic and that this is why, again, every day. I've got to explain to the world why I'm different every day, because the world doesn't want to just, oh, I already know that. Then why am I explaining it every day? You know, it's like, it's hard.
Have you seen any forward movement with what you've done?
I definitely have. With my son's school, I've turned them around to the point where, you know, we have really great conversations. They're really positive. They're really open. And that's the other thing. You don't fix this stuff by aggression and violence. You know, it's a respect. So I'm respectful with the school. I'm respectful, you know, with employers. And I get paid money to talk to big companies now, which is ironic because they wouldn't hire me, right? This is kind of funny. But, you know, you have to be respectful. So it's actually it's a relationship. It's working together. And too many people either fall into the trap of, you know, either doing nothing or just yelling from the sidelines.
The vulnerability side of stepping into who you are. We might have some viewers that don't know where to start. They might not have the same diagnosis you do. What would you say to them about being vulnerable with their story and also trying to create change for the next generation?
If you want to be vulnerable and be your real self, what's the worst that can happen? Oh, people won't like me. Okay, well then, but how's that bad? Because if they don't like you for your real self, maybe this is an autism thing, but I actually don't care what people think. The real you is only offensive to people that, you know, that obviously don't like who they are. So, you know, you need to be vulnerable and you need to be yourself. And that's why, you know, when I do my videos, they're pretty horrible. Like, it's because I don't really care what you know, what you don't know. Doesn't really bother me, and I don't understand how to guess what's right, what you should know and what you shouldn't know. You know, be vulnerable enough to take off the mask, because I've had to, because I've been masking my whole life to fit in, and it hasn't worked, and I'm tired.
Do you still feel that void of, is this it in life?
Yeah, absolutely. Is this it in life? You're doing all this effort to do these things while you're alive. What do you think happens when you're gone?
And that's why you have created these videos. That's why you're vulnerable, and that's why you're doing it.
It's a legacy. It's a legacy you can watch, and that can help people for forever. And that's something that content can do more than almost anything else. You know, words in a room,
right?
They die on the ground. You know, content stays forever.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
And now to an actor's story, where his vulnerability was unscripted. When it comes to vulnerability, Davis Guggenheim, a director known for his work with ER, Melrose Place, The First Date, and many more, went there. He walked us through a hard stage that actually connected him to a story that was also difficult. And as the camera started rolling, both found deeper purpose.
I read one of Michael J. Fox's books, and it was so inspiring. And I was like, I want to know more about that. I was down in the dumps during COVID. I'm approaching 60 years old. I felt like I was in a rut. And I was like, I'm sick of the movies I've been making. I need something different. And so I called him up. It lifted me out of that hole. Like, it's, I think when people think when they hear about this movie, oh, it's going to be a sad movie about a guy with Parkinson's. It's absolutely not that movie. It's an uplifting story about this guy. He drops out of high school, moves to LA. He's like really short. No one thinks he's going to do anything. He picks up as the biggest movie star in America. He goes from nothing to here in like a couple of years.
The story of me, take 2.
3, 2, here we go, ready and action.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine?
Here is Michael J. Fox. What is the secret of your success?
And the winner is...
Michael J. Fox.
I don't believe I feel 4 feet tall.
I pitched Apple TV Plus. I said, I don't want to make a documentary. I want to make an 80s Michael J. Fox movie. A wild ride that has ups and downs and laughter and tears, and that's what we did. It really does feel like a ride.
I woke up and I noticed my pinky. Auto-animated. Parkinson's disease.
Going to the vulnerability part of his interviews, I mean, he went there.
Yeah.
Was it hard to have him go there?
No, I think, here's the thing. He talks about Parkinson's as the gift that keeps on taking. Think about that. Parkinson's is this chronic disease. It gets worse and worse. It doesn't get better. But it's been a gift for him. Like it is for all of us. When we start to touch our mortality and we start to feel fragile in our lives, we start to stop and appreciate things. I think because of who he is and where he is in his life, he's just like, what am I gonna hide? Right. And I think often when you watch a documentary, you're going, are they really telling me everything? Like they're circling around this one idea, but they're just giving me sort of like half the story. Michael's an open book in this movie. What did it mean to be still?
I wouldn't know I was ever still. I get it. I was big. I was bigger than bubblegum.
The sad sack story is Michael J. Fox gets this debilitating disease and it crushes him.
Yeah, that's boring.
I just want people to feel what I feel, which is like he lifts me up. Here's this guy, he's got a really tough deal right now. His Parkinson's is pretty advanced, but every time I'm with him, it lifts me up. And when people watch this movie, I want them to feel that way too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Being vulnerable can be a choice, but what if it's not? We chat with Jane Lynch.
Vulnerability, and there's bad vulnerability. When you're innocent and you're just expecting the best out of people, I think that's good. But being online, you have to recognize that it's kind of the Wild West out there, and the world can be that way too. So you have to have a certain amount of protection and be able to suss out the bad ones, like my character in this voiceover.
When it came over your way, were you like, this is something I have to be a part of?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I heard myself when I read it. I was like, oh, I can do this. And well, I am one of those people who overshares on social media and on the internet in general. And this whole idea that we may not be, all of our information may not be safe. And how we kind of go into it thinking that we're protected and we're not. And so this, I thought, was a really fun way to kind of scare people into knowing that their health information, that they might actually unwillingly be just giving it out to the internet. Just always go with your heart, what means something to you, and don't ever do anything against your own sense of what's helpful in society and what is not helpful in society.
And now to a book turned movie where we follow an I Felt Margaret.
An iconic book turned movie, taking you back to the reality of the teenage transition. And we sat down with Kelly Freeman Craig, the director and writer of this Lionsgate film, and discovered the reality of bringing this to life and all the emotion behind it.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to go back to 11-year-old self when you were reading it. Yeah. At that point in your life, because I was a young dreamer, I don't know about you, were you dreaming of things you could potentially do with movies and that kind of stuff at 11?
I was constantly writing in a journal and making up stories and plays.
And so when you stepped into this, did you say, okay, I'm gonna go back and find my favorite novels from when I was younger? Like,
yes.
How did you, oh, that's what you did.
I did, yes, that's exactly what I did, yeah.
I'm so curious with the process of, I'm gonna go back and find novels and actually turn it into, like, that's brilliant in itself. So what was that journey like for you?
Well, I really, what happened was I sat down and I thought, who are the authors that most impacted me? What are the books I just loved and like live in my heart? And Judy Blume was at the top of that list. And so I started to reread all her work. And when I got to this one, I just was bowled over by it. The last page I thought was so beautiful. And I thought, this has to be a movie. It deserves to be a movie.
Be normal and regular like everybody else. Just please, 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 please.
It's interesting because as you're following Margaret, it was this reality of what it is like to be coming of age. And I started thinking back to all the awkwardness of,
so much
going
awkwardness.
into teenage years.
I feel like awkwardness is the 12-year-old existence, at least mine, it's just such a strange, because you're not a kid, you're not an adult, you're just in this weird in-between zone, and you become very self-conscious. And it's a wild time, it's a hard time. And I have to say though, when you get past it, you can look back and laugh because because it does pass, and and we've all been there.
You touched on a lot, the spirituality, big one. Obviously, we have two different religions going on here, and that scene around when the grandmas are all there, a lot going on in that room.
Yeah.
But then you also are showing just like the coming of age and the reality behind all that.
Yep.
So it was like a really good look and warm feeling. What do you want the viewers to walk away with from this?
Most of all, I hope they relate. I hope they see themselves in Margaret, and and that they laugh, and that they're moved, and and I hope it inspires them to go tell their own stories with their friends. That's what we see happen. People go to the theater and they watch it, and then you just see everyone get together and start to swap stories and laugh.
Well, we were doing
connecting about it. Yes,
we were doing that before we started rolling camera.
That's what happens, and it's really cool.
Well, thank you so much for creating this piece. I have to say, now I want to read the book. I'm not an active reader, but now I want to. And I think you're right. It does spark that conversation.
Yeah.
This is who I am. This is where I come from. And this is where I'm kind of going. To be vulnerable is to be open. And that's what we do each week on The Whitney Reynolds Show. Remember, your story matters.
The Whitney Reynolds Show is made possible by Together at Peace, a foundation supporting hopeful bereavement care for the world by inspiring people to find ways to live with, honor, and share the unique love they carry, spreading the light that still shines bright. Together at Peace. Children's Learning Place, dedicated to empowering young students with the confidence to overcome present and future challenges to promote a brighter future for all. Kevin O'Connor Law Firm. When it comes to your injuries, we take it personally. JoePerillo.com, where you can browse their selection of pre-owned luxury vehicles. Based in Chicago, shipping all over the country. Simple Modern, drinkware with unique styles for adults and kids. Take us with you. The Adventures of Harry Moon book series for kids, focusing on becoming your best self with themes of friendship, anti-bullying, and responsibility. At harrymoon.org. Kevin Kelly, Fume Claire, Midwest Moving and Storage, Mike Dyer, Brendan Stadunsky, and by these funders.
Coming up on The Whitney Reynolds Show's current season.
10 years of emotional battle were wiped out within 2-3 minutes. And so when I am on set, it feels like home, like being like home, and the camaraderie that's there with everybody willing to give their all, from not just the actors, but our crew, the grips, our caterers. Everybody is, and not everybody has, is of faith, but they are all enveloped by it, and I do see it affecting how people treat each other there.
So I got to tattoo at Sturgis. It's a huge biker rally in South Dakota. And one morning we had a group of bikers come in that wanted to get a memorial tattoo for one of their friends, one of their crew that always went with them. But unfortunately she was terminally ill, and the night before she partied with her husband, her friends, her family, her son, and that morning around 7 a.m. she went back to the hospice and passed away. So around 11 a.m. they all came in to get a tattoo for her. And it was intense. It was very intense, just because it was so fresh, I think. And all of us, like all of the tattoo artists, we were in tears.
I am getting back in the convoy of vehicles, and I text my husband some stupid joke that says, if I get kidnapped, will you come and get me? Will you come and rescue me? And he responds, Something like, ha, of course, now just be safe and get back to the guest house. And that's the last interaction we have. And I hear the crack of the butt of an AK-47 and putting the gun to my head, and he screams at the driver to drive.
For more information on today's program, visit WhitneyReynolds.com or get social with us. Facebook, Whitney Reynolds Show, Twitter, Whitney Reynolds, or on TikTok and Instagram, Whitney_Reynolds.
Our mom